I'm amazed by sort of the lack of courage among intellectuals. But then you look at like men generally, and so like something like happens like Russia invades Ukraine. It seems like when there's a war or something, it seems like you can have a sort of constant stream of men going out, being willing to risk themselves, engage in physically very brave activities. Countries all over the world, they have drafts. They go die by the millions. There's courage. It's not. It's too simple to say men are cowardly.
Sure.
But then you're looking for people to say politically incorrect things, and they're scared. Why? That always drove me crazy. Like, why do men seem more likely to be willing to die? People in general. I'm just focusing on men here. Than they are to say politically incorrect things about race or gender or whatever issue. I don't get it. It's a very odd aspect of humanity, don't you think?
It may be which way the social pressure cuts. So there can be a lot of pressure to enlist in
Yeah.
particular wars. And then the courageous thing to do is to not enlist, even though fighting may be a higher chance of dying. But courage in this sense is subjective. It
Yeah.
also amazes me the number of wealthy people who are just afraid. And they could really say F you to the world and just go off and live off their money and be more than fine. And people respond to this differently. But it's not always the marginal incentives you might expect. A lot of people get more caught up in the trap the more they have, not less. It's like they earn to be independent, but the more they earn, the less independent they are. And that fascinates me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, likewise. I mean, the idea that it's all just social pressure, that would be a parsimonious explanation of what's going on. If people say, don't talk, being having the right attitudes on a college campus and fighting a war, they look very different. One looks like sort of being meek and submissive to like the collective, and the other one looks like sort of brave and masculine. But they're the same thing. They're just responding to social pressure. And so, if you just assume human beings are social creatures and highly influenced by what other people are doing, I guess that would explain it all, right? It's all just
But it's
conform.
not, here's another factor, and this worries me. It's very hard in contemporary society to help other people a great deal unless you are yourself like politically acceptable. And I think there's a lot of people, they're not cowards. They really want to help others. But for them to continue helping others, they've got to stay on one side of the line. And that's one of the more screwed up things we're doing. If you could be considered like socially out there and unacceptable, but we still would let you help other people, I think we'd have a better discourse, a better society. I know that's hard to pull off, but it seems to me it should entirely be possible. And that's one of those things we need to learn because it's not all just people being cowards.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes it's self-sacrificial. You're right. So if you're a professor, for example, and you need to write letters of recommendation and help place your students, you're in a position where your actions don't only harm yourself; they harm others, right? So that
Yeah,
is.
or like you're Bill Gates, and now people say all these things about you. I don't follow those debates, but his ability to help other people is way lower than it had been.
Yeah. Do you think that with greater, sort of cultural and political polarization, there's that takes care of it? Because, like, for example, you look at somebody like, Peter Thiel, who's, he could have just stayed more sort of as a more neutral cultural figure. He could have decided that would probably have less influence on politics today than if he did it. He sort of put his chips in with, being more influential on the political right. And maybe overall that gives him more sort of gives him more power. So is maybe sort of greater sort of polarization and political sort of discord a way to create these bubbles in the sense that, like, okay, this side hates you. This is not going to work in academia where it's a monoculture, but in everything else, like, this side hates you. These other people like you, and that sort of creates good incentives for people to maybe go a little bit out there.
There's a lot packed into there, but I would first challenge the view that we're so polarized. I don't think we are. We are in the sense that we hate each other a lot.
Mhm.
But in terms of people agreeing how the federal budget should be spent, I'm not sure I've ever seen more agreement in my lifetime, for better or worse. So we've packed all the polarization into a smaller number of dimensions, is how I would describe it. But we
Yeah.
might be less polarized. I'm not sure Peter Thiel is politically influential. I mean, I guess we'll see after these Senate races. But I wouldn't take that for granted. I think Peter's doing what he thinks is right. I I don't know if it's influential.
Mhm. Well, I mean,
Probably boomerang effects in politics, just
yeah,
like with the woke. Maybe they're just helping elect Republicans.
yeah.
Some of that's been undone by, Dobbs and the abortion stuff. But if somehow that were on a different trajectory, clearly the impact of the woke would have been to elect more Republicans. Now it's more up for grabs.
Yeah. So maybe we're not. You're right. Maybe we're not polarized. Yeah. It's funny how little debate there are in these budgetary matters compared to the Tea Party. 12 years ago, where there seemed to be some actual intellectual difference there. But the effective polarization. But political scientists, they talk about effective polarization, just how
Yeah,
much you hate other
and that's
people.
clearly up.
And but that can have the effect that I'm talking about, right? Because if I'm canceled by group X, then group Y, might be more favorably inclined to me, and therefore I have more, sort of room to influence group Y. At least I'm not a non-person, right? It's hard. I think it's getting harder to have a complete, outside of academia, a complete societal cancellation. Like, there's people on the far right and the far left, who I think are more, influential than they could be, the most sort of outer edges, just because there's so much polarization. Like, okay, if the New York Times writes a hit piece on Mr. X, even if Mr. X is pretty bad, we don't want to do what the New York Times says. So we accept that person. I feel like that gives people sort of more room to, maybe it brings in some odious figures to the public debate, but also gives other people just sort of more room to say what they think.
But even that phrase, odious figures, I'm made uncomfortable by. Like, okay, you can cite Hitler, Hitler's odious. I think we make ourselves stupider. Like, I like to ask this question: does this person favor price controls on prescription drugs? Well, they might not. To me, that's like a terrible view that will kill many thousands of
Yeah,
people, maybe
yeah.
more. But I don't think of those people as odious. I think they're wrong about something. And if someone's called odious, I'll just ask myself, well, are their views worse than the views of someone who wants price controls on prescription drugs?
Yeah.
Well, like, who's odious? I know there's the Hitler thing and Godwin's law, but we gotta like mostly move past that and just focus on like the ideas and being more analytical. I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was sort of using the term just sort of
Oh, I
like
know.
for
I'm not
sake of
blaming you. If anything, you react against this. I get
it.
your role in this debate.